Hello once again everyone, and welcome to the beginning of a brand new series where I'm going to be talking about my harness. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about all the different levels of my harness, kind of under the general frame of this is a harness I wore at this time, for this reason, these are the pieces I liked, etc. I won't be able to recreate all of the ones that I've worn, but I'll get as best an approximation as I can, because some pieces I've either passed on or I was just borrowing or what have you. But today's first episode is also rather nice because it's my lightest possible armor kit, my foot soldier kit. And this is great because, of course, Yeehaw is just on the horizon, so if you're looking still at what sort of pieces of armor, let this serve as a bit of inspiration. So for reference, this is the kit that I built and wore up at the School of the Renaissance Soldier, the off-year event for WAW. And the reason I built the kit the way I wanted to is, number one, it was centered for the latter half of the kind of Renaissance, the idea of that sort of pike and shot warfare, so I looked at what sort of armor was prized. My original intention was to have helmet, mantle, and breastplate. Breastplate didn't quite get it figured out before the event, but honestly, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I ended up doing pretty fine with just what I'm wearing. So let me show you its features. So firstly, my Bergenet's probably the biggest bit, and when it came to what do I really want to make sure is safe, I focused on the idea of fighting as a halberdier as much as I could. By all means, you know, I'm still going to do all the pike stuff and things like that, but if it came down to mass combat, which it did, my plan was to be a halberd guy. And the reason I wanted to be that is because a lot of people kind of overlook the halberd as being, you know, not as sexy as, say, you know, using a Zweihander or a Montante or something along those lines, but I will point out that, you know, halberds were pretty important and usually given to guys who were expected to be pretty rough and tumble. So when it came time for the mass combat, especially since I ended up being elected sergeant of my group, this was pretty much my kit. I was wearing different Plunderhosen at the time, but this is essentially what I was wearing. I had my face on that I'll put on in just a second, but I carried a different halberd, but I carried a halberd. I had my gauntlets, which are rather ironically the halberdier gauntlets from Arm Street. I chose these because they're some of the safest hand protection I have, and really that was where I wanted to make sure I had some armor. And there were even a couple times where I would do a parry and this cuff would cause something to deflect, and that was incredibly useful. They're nice and flexible, so I had no problems there. Beyond that, and my mantle, which as you see goes relatively far across my shoulders, giving me a decent amount of upper shoulder coverage. In case anything did come over and try to get me there, I felt relatively safe unless they got that tight push. And there were even a couple times that cuts got in there and touched what would have been my shoulder, but instead hit the mantle, so I was A-okay. The rest of me was relatively unarmored. This is kind of my normal fencing kit, so just a light jacket, my Plunderhosen, my shin guards, and then I had the setup of I was wearing this baldric with this messer. I chose to go with the messer just because I could grip it most easily in the gauntlets, and I even wore a dagger, something I normally don't do, but went ahead and did so, and it ended up helping out when I got into a close range scuffle. So let me just fire my face on real quick, and then I'll do a little bit of further discussion, then we'll talk about how it can modify. So all I do to put my face on, just slide this in, close it up, do the buckle around the back, which I'm happy to say is something I can do myself. There we go. Retainer's a little bit rolled forward, but that's fine. There we go. Put my gauntlets back on. And there you go. And this was my kit. Pretty much this is an open face helmet, of course, so basically the way I looked a second ago is how you would score this. This little bever, if something hit this just by itself, I went ahead and just ignored it because it's a solid piece of metal and that's right over this, so unless it was enough to like push, I just went ahead and rolled with it because it'd be hitting my mantle anyway. The cheek flaps really came in clutch a couple times. There were times when a point would go toward my face. I turned my head just a little bit and hit that cheek flap. As far as mobility goes, and visibility goes, I can see very, very well, all the way over to about here on my periphery, so I had no difficulties there. The only time it kind of got scary is if something did come down from above. I can't see because I have a brim, so there were times when I had to slightly incline my head up to actually see. But being a taller guy, I really didn't have to do that a whole lot. Mobility was great. I could run, jump, fight, did all sorts of stuff. Even at one point had to pull my dagger and all that good stuff, which I just missed completely, but that's fine. Yeah, it ended up working out very, very well, and I did quite well there. As far as a foot soldier kit, this is a great way to start. You could do this of any sort of different period, depending upon what helmet and clothing you match it in with. So, for example, you could replace this with something more like a salet, or a bar boots, or a kettle helm, and then, you know, maybe throw on some elbows or things along those lines, maybe more of a padded jacket instead of the light jacket, and bada bing, bada boom, all of a sudden you look like you're more 14th century or 15th century instead of the 16th century footman that I was going for. If I were fighting as a 2 or something along those lines under Yeehaw rules, I would absolutely go with this kit. I might add the breastplate just for that, but other than that, I did feel quite secure. I was able to really fulfill my role, which was binding up pikes, following the roldaderos wherever they went, and just kind of being evil in that regard. Now, speaking of which, actually, the one modification that I can make to this kit pretty quickly is in case I needed to fight as a Rotella user, which was really the other big thing I was going to be. All I do is ditch my left gauntlet, fire on a padded glove for this side, and then I can switch over to my Rotella, which is just, you know, one strap away pretty much. And again, that's why I love these gauntlets that I'm wearing, because I'm able to do all this while keeping them on, which I really can't tell you quite how rare that is. There we go. And bada bing. I'm now set and ready to fight as a Rodolero, which I did on a couple different occasions. I ended up actually using my Targe for the majority of the mass melee, and hopefully I'll get my hands on some footage of that so you can see. But really, this would be the same idea, and I fought like this a lot while preparing for the event. The nice benefit of this is that now with that Rotella, I'm very, very well covered. Anything comes toward my head, tilt it down. Anything comes toward my body, close it off. As far as working through positions such as, for example, what Godinho likes to do, so I'm safe. Don't really need to do the high one because I got a helmet. If anything comes on this side, step in for that crush. Got my low, all very secure. There were more than a few times where I had to shuck something off to my side and was safe as such. The messer ended up serving well, though this could be any sword. There were a couple times I used my basket hilt, so I ditched the gauntlet for a lighter glove, but that's because I had that security. There were even a few times when the gauntlet did save my bacon. Something would go over my sword and go toward me, but hit that cuff once again. So, nice and secure that way. So really, as far as this kit goes, it's a very versatile little early kit, specifically built around the idea, like I said, of being a 16th century footman, but could very easily be modified just slightly to allow you to do any sort of period you wanted. Gauntlets and helmet and neck are generally the most important priorities because that's where your vitals are. Under Yeehaw rules, I might favor a padded jacket instead of a light jacket, though that's a personal preference thing. If you feel comfortable as it is, then you don't need that extra padding, but you know, if I was going to be going up against a bunch of other one-handed cutters, then having that padding could make a difference. But yeah, so this is my harness at its most base level. If you see some armor is worn footage, some light armor is worn sparring, which is something I intend to film in the near future, you will probably see this kit and or the other kit that I'll be wearing in the sequel to this video, so keep your eyes out for that. But overall, very easy to turn what would have been just a standard HEMA sparring kit into a relatively effective Footman kit, and it really did serve me quite well, even when I forgot and put on my dagger backwards, but oh well. Either way though, thank you all very, very much for watching, and we'll go over some other techniques another time.